So here we are today. I think this is going to be a good one for people. I think that we're going to talk about things that are a little deeper than normal, but try to get more surface than truly dig into something ugly, and that can be divorce. But the person that I'm bringing here, Stephen Putonti, divorce without the $10,000 retainer and how one attorney is changing the game. So, Stephen, thank you for coming and meeting us in this little podcast room and to do some stuff here. I think one of the biggest things that people kind of get lost in is, when they've been together for 20 years and they're going to get divorced, nobody wants it, right? It's like everybody tries to fight to keep it. Sometimes divorce has to happen because of really horrible circumstances. But what made you want to get into this kind of law? It's a dirty business.
Nothing, to be honest.
Nothing?
It was a very strange thing that happened. I had a business. I had a law firm with two partners, and we had just settled a very big case, multi-million-dollar case. And we could tell at that point that we all wanted to go our separate ways. So I was at the first point in my career. This was probably when I was in my early 40s, and I had realized, even though I'd been a Christian my whole life, that I never actually prayed about my career. And I thought, well, this would be a nice time. I'm 42 years old. It's about time. So I literally prayed, what do you want me to do with my license, with my career, with my profession? And sometimes there's certain prayers you shouldn't, like pray for patience.
No.
That's the big one.
Pastor
Don't pray for patience,
do not.
or your kids are going to drive you nuts. So I prayed about it. I was like, what do you want me to do with my career? I'm already 18 years in, and what happened next blew my mind. So prior to that prayer, in a year, I probably got 2 to 5 phone calls a year on, do you know a family lawyer? Because I wasn't a family lawyer. And the week that I prayed, I got 10 phone calls.
Wow.
And I prayed the next weekend and said, I made a mistake. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to be a family lawyer. I never wanted to be a family lawyer or a criminal lawyer. But I felt like I was almost disrespecting God because he was sending me a message. I really do believe that was a message. I never got so many phone calls on, do you know a good divorce lawyer, a child custody case, I've been abused, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, let me dip my toe in the water. And that was the last thing that happened. That's the last thing I remember happening.
Yeah, I mean, we go to church together, and I've actually went and sat in with one of these meetings with a buddy of mine, and they didn't get divorced, which I'm really thankful for, and always try to talk people out of it. But you want to give people the right people. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like why I hope people send people to me for mortgages. Is because like they know that I'm not going to try to screw them. That I'm trying to really do the right thing for them. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted you on this, because I'm in lawsuits right now with my pool and everything, and I like my lawyer. I hope if he ever watches this, I really do.
Yeah.
But I mean, every text message, every email, everything is billed to the point of like annoyance. I think I said to you when I wanted to do this, if mortgages were done the way that attorneys bill, it would take 4 to 6 months for someone to close on a house.
Heck yeah.
Because the amount of calls I do and I bill, and you know what I mean, you drag it out because you're getting paid more. I just think it's a criminal act in a sense sometimes on how the billing goes. But when you started doing this, now that you went from, oh my gosh, I don't know what I want to do, to God telling you basically like, showing you like, hey, this is what I want you to do. What didn't sit with you right with traditional firms and the way that they do that? When did that switch in your model brain of like kind of how you could do it differently?
So about 7 years in. So whenever you start doing something, everybody kind of does it the same way. You look around, you look who's succeeding and who's making money and who's good at what they do, and you kind of follow their lead. Yeah. So when I started doing family law, I knew nothing about divorces, literally. I mean, people think lawyers know everything about every law. It's like, no, we don't. We don't know how it works. They're
so separate. Like I know that when I'm doing one thing, they're like, I don't do bankruptcy. So now you have to go to a bankruptcy attorney, and then back to this attorney. So I thought you guys all knew everything.
Yeah, it's like doctors, like a foot doctor doesn't treat your heart,
True.
So what ended up happening is I started doing what every other lawyer did. And what every other lawyer does is they take a retainer, because you don't want to chase clients for money. So you say, okay, I can handle your case. I need a $7,500, $10,000, $12,000,
Depending on the scope.
$15,000 yeah, depending on how complicated the case is and how expensive the lawyers is. You take a retainer and you put that retainer in a trust account in your bank.
Okay.
And what happens is every 2 weeks, every month, you calculate all your billing and you send out a bill and you move. If I did $2,000 worth of work on your case, I move $2,000 from your retainer over to my pocket. I'm basically taking it from your pocket and put it in my pocket.
Gotcha. It's like an escrow account.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you think about that for more than 10 seconds, you realize there's an inner conflict there.
100%.
The more work I do, the more money I make. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to create work.
There's nothing over. There's no CFPB. There's no oversight to your billing, really.
I can tell you horror stories. I'll tell you one particular one that just made me laugh the other day.
Okay.
But it's an internal. And then the other thing is there's no oversight on the attorney. And, I've seen attorneys bill something that takes me 20 minutes. I've seen attorneys bill 2 to 3 hours for. And I know damn well they didn't spend 2 or 3 hours doing it. And no one knows that except other attorneys.
And how do you prove it?
You can't.
You can't say,
No.
I was doing research while you were drinking your beer.
Yes, exactly. So after about 6 or 7 years, I started to be bothered and frustrated by 3 things. The money, how attorneys handle your money. It's your money, and they're supposed to be efficient with it. And they're not. And I can tell 10 stories about how they're not efficient. Second problem is they'll return your phone calls and your emails and your text messages right away until that money hits the bank. And then good luck getting your attorney on the phone or getting an email response. And I would hear this isn't me making this up. This was my first few years hearing people saying, I hate my lawyer, I want to hire you. And I always ask why. And these were the 3 complaints. I can't get him on the phone and not returning my emails. He seems to be always busy or she's always busy, whatever. So the amount of money and how it's treated, the communication flow, and the third problem I saw was the pace of the case, how fast or slow it moves. And people were complaining, it's been 8 months, it's been 12 months. I'm like,
so slow.
well, tell me what's happened so far. Nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? Nothing's happened and you're just getting billed?
It's crazy. And you don't want to call and ask, because if you call and ask, you get charged. It's
Right.
like, and you'll see that email on there. Hey, and they have to. I had to respond to your email about what's going on.
And they're asking me for more money and the case isn't even out of the gate yet.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I started, once you hear something over and over and over again, I'm the kind of guy who thinks to himself, how do I fix this? How do I fix this problem? And I'm going to be swimming upstream.
Yeah.
Because all the lawyers are going in one direction. We're all doing it that way.
Right.
How do I swim upstream? And I just literally thought about it, meditated, prayed about it. Like, how am I going to fix these 3 problems? And so I created a practice where I basically said, I'm going to give you control of all those 3 things. I'm not going to charge you a retainer. You're gonna dictate the communication flow, and you're gonna dictate how fast or slow your case gets resolved. Because believe it or not, I have had a few clients who say, I don't want this over sooner than later. I want to drag this out.
Yeah.
Because I think I can convince my spouse to come back.
That makes sense.
Or I want my kids to graduate high school. Whatever the reason was, is they wanted to slow roll it.
Wow.
So I said, well, here's why I'm going to put you in control. I shouldn't be the one dictating your life. So I set up this program where I said, first of all, right out of the gate, they love hearing this. I don't charge you a $10,000 retainer.
Yeah.
But if you called 15 lawyers and said you had a divorce, they'll talk to you, they'll give you a sales pitch, but they won't give you any advice or any...
Because you didn't pay them yet.
Because you hadn't paid them yet.
And you do a free consultation up front, correct?
Free consultation. The booking is 15 minutes, but if people always apologize when we're at 20, 25, 30 minutes, I'm like, don't worry about that. I book it so that my calendar, if I have another appointment, obviously I got to get them off the phone, but if I don't have another appointment, I talk to some people for an hour.
Yeah, no, I've seen it.
I'm like, I need you to understand what we're doing, because number one, it's a very emotional, personal, and it involves your family. It's a very important decision. Second of all, it's a financial decision. It's a huge financial decision.
Sure.
Because at that point, every single person you talk to has some level of emotion. It's a 1 or it's a 15. It's off the chart.
Yeah.
So I could see that in the first 10 seconds that I'm talking to them, if this is an emotional decision. And you don't make, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I don't make very good decisions when I'm very emotional.
Yeah, I don't think anybody does. I
So
think,
when they're talking to me and they're upset and whatever the emotion is, anger, sadness, depression, whatever it is, what I do, kind of my Jedi mind trick, I'll call it,
yeah,
is I talk to them about something else because I want that level of emotion to come
Sure.
down a little bit so we can talk sensible. So I'll talk to them about their kids. Oh, so tell me about Jeremy. He's 12. What does he like to do? And all of a sudden,
Redirecting them.
they relax
Yeah.
because they love talking about Jeremy being a soccer star or a baseball star. So I do that. I kind of play little tricks on them. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was an interrogator for 7 years. And my talent was basically was people who were lying. They would send me on these cases that were 20, 30, 50, $100 million cases.
Yeah.
And they'd say, we're going to trial in a month. We need you to depose this star witness.
Wow.
And my job was to tear them apart. Well, I don't go in there yelling and screaming like most people
No.
think, a few good men, like
Yes.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I would go in and I'd make friends with the guy for 15 minutes. Then I'd find something in common, and then I'd get him in a relaxed state, and then I'd start asking questions. And the important question wasn't the first one, it was the 15th.
Yeah.
I would ask him a bunch of questions to set him up, and then I'd ask him the big
Bam.
question.
Yeah.
And there was no right answer. He had to answer it the way I wanted him to answer it.
That's
So
crazy.
I use that talent in family law because when you're talking to someone who is a S show, that their world is falling apart. Their kids, their family, their money, you have to refocus them to get them to an emotional state where they can talk sensibly. So that's kind of what I try to do.
That's interesting. Well, so I guess explain a little bit then on God, that's crazy. The a la carte, like kind of pay as you go, right? So
Yeah.
if you're not doing the retainer thing, which is kind of the way that the modern normal world has dealt with it, who's this model best for, and how do you set something like that up so people can have some kind of is it after your 15 minutes you kind of get a grip on what's going on? You see how crazy one is or the other, and is this going to be able to be mediated, or how does that work?
So what I do is the first 15, 20, 30 minutes, I'm figuring out what their case involves, who's involved, and I basically am breaking down in my head how many steps it's going to take them to get to divorce, 5, 10, 20, 30 steps. And the way I set it up is I say you don't pay a retainer. What I allow people to do is book a 15, 30, or 60-minute meeting, and you pay for that. That's your payment. During that meeting, we're going to discuss the next 1, 2, or 3 steps. So most people don't want to take on 15 steps. I do have clients who book a 1-hour meeting and say, give me 15 things to do, and
Yeah.
I'll book another 1-hour meeting a month from now. But what I do is I say 15 minutes, you can cover 2 or 3 things.
Yeah.
So let's do that. Here's the next 2 or 3 things you need to do. Do you want to do them or do you want me to do them? If I do them, it's going to cost a little extra.
Sure.
If you do them, I'll just review your work and make some edits and changes, and then you're done. You don't pay an attorney to do stuff. What most people don't realize is about 80 to 90% of what divorce lawyers do isn't actual legal work. They have legal knowledge, paralegals help, but it's gathering information. It's creating a proposal that the other side will accept. It's a lot of non-legal work, but lawyers charge $300, $400, $500, $600 an hour for it because the person is sitting in front of them and they're upset, they're emotional, they don't know where to go, and they just need here's a check, fix my problem.
Right.
And that mentality will get you broke.
Yes.
Because what I try to do is say, okay, we need to do all this information. I create a video. That's another thing that I do for my clients is when I figured out I was saying something over and over and over again 100 times,
Yeah.
I was like, why am I doing this? I just created a video and I say, go to this page.
Go watch this. And
Go
this
watch the
will explain.
video.
Yeah.
So you get your 15 minutes of education, and then our meeting
You're not
only
paying
has
for
to
it.
be 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to have a 20-minute conversation.
awesome.
We can have a 5-minute conversation. So what I try to do is give people information and get them started. So my client base, what I thought of when I first started doing this is I could see that out of the population of people who need a family lawyer, 10, maybe 20, maybe 25% of the people could afford a lawyer. And that's all who attorneys are focusing on. And I said, well, what if I focus on the 75% who can't afford a lawyer?
Yeah.
Who can't pay a $10,000 retainer?
Right.
So that's where this all came from. Is I don't want to be fishing in this pond where there's 15 fishermen.
Right.
I want to go over here where there's nobody fishing.
Sure.
So I started helping people who couldn't afford, waitresses, people who weren't employed, people who the husband was employed or the wife was employed and they were a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
And that was my focus target, my target audience. So when I got them on the phone and I said, this is how I do this, they started telling people. And now all of a sudden I opened the door to legal help that didn't require a $10,000 check. You know, it was $100 here, $200 there, and they can manage it.
Yeah. Do most of the divorces go into mediation? Like, what would you say the percentages out of 10 get done within 3 to 6 months? And do they traditionally go to mediation, or do they have to go all the way?
I would say that my experience, probably 60 to 75% go through mediation. And it could be for the whole case, or it could be for one issue. They're fighting over one thing and they can't agree on it, so they go to mediation. And mediation is what I prefer to do. I love doing mediations because mediations can get your entire case settled in a matter of hours instead of 8, 9, 10 months
Sure.
of litigation and costs.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the common complaint or resistance is, well, they're never going to agree. Why are we going to mediation and paying for that? Because they're never going to agree. You know, we're going to fight about it. And I'm like, well, you're going to have an independent third party listening to them and telling them that's not a valid argument, or that's not going to win you in court. And the mediator gets to say things that the attorneys sometimes can't say.
Gotcha.
You know, they're an independent, looking at it from an independent perspective.
Right.
And so the success rate of mediation is about 95%, 90 to 95%.
Gosh.
So people resist it, but I'm like, with a 90 to 95% success rate, why wouldn't you?
Well, I think it's also TV. I think it's like you see these, we're in mediation and you're sitting on this big table and you got lawyers over here and lawyers over here and everything's done that way. And from what I'm learning, and hopefully going to mediation with my case is, and through ChatGPT, and that's another question I got for you, you know, it's like you're in a room and the mediator comes in and says, okay, so this is this and this and this. And then I'm like, no, hell no, I'm not taking that. And then they go back to the other room and they say, well, he's not going to take it. And then they come back to your room. So you're never really in the room with each other. You're in separate rooms so that everyone, because otherwise you're right, it would just be a crap.
We never do family law. I only did one in 2,000 cases that was in the same room. And I'll tell you a funny story about that. This is the reason why we don't go in the same room. You never go in the same room because it's a very, like I said, it's a very personal, emotional thing that's happening. Yeah. It's not two guys arguing over a contract, right? Which, you know, even then, it's not a good idea to be in the same room because body language is massive.
Real estate deals used to be done in the same room. Did you know that? Like, literally, could you imagine a buyer and a seller at the closing table together working through those issues? How crazy that would be.
It's very.
It used to be done that way.
It's not the one case I had a mediation. I resisted, but I said, okay, they want to meet in the same room, I'll do that. And the wife, I was representing the husband, and you know the husband, I can't say his name here. But the wife was across the table from me, and I had a stone face on. I was just sitting there emotionless. And she looked at the mediator and said, we need to stop the mediation. And he said, why? And she said, Mr. Putonti is laughing at me. And the mediator looked at me, and I was stone-faced. And he said, he's not laughing at you. She said, he's laughing on the inside.
Oh my God.
And so the mediator started to laugh, and he's like, I'm sorry. What do you mean by that? She goes, well, every time I say something, I can tell he's laughing on the inside because by looking in his eyes. And I went, okay. I said, and I thought to myself, I am actually laughing on the inside, but how do you know that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
So having a mediation in the same room is not a good idea, especially family law people. But
that's awesome.
It is pretty funny, but
man, you just knocked out a whole bunch of stuff that I had in here. But going back to the chat stuff, so I think it's hilarious where I went to ChatGPT and was like, here's my case, here's the documents that I have, tell me how this mediation is probably going to go. And I think I only spent 15 minutes on it, and it literally gave me a script on if they say this, do that. If they do this, then they're going to ask this question. And I mean, now in law, and what I think is going to happen is you're going to have, in the attorneys, you're going to now have all these kids that came out of college that are going to have all this debt, and they're going to have a very hard time because all that paralegal work is now done by AI.
Yeah.
Right? And
yeah, I mean, I think we're at the infancy of AI. Like people are
saying in
still
1
figuring
year,
it out. Yeah, they're just going to figure it out.
like why would I have a kid go through all those cases when I can upload it and it'll tell me everything I want to know and every question I want to ask versus nights of a person billing me and working on, or a salary or whatever. So you're going to have the upper guys that are partners that are making all the money, and you're going to have other attorneys, but it's like what's going to happen to the entry level people? You know what I mean? And how are they going to learn? They learn through osmosis. They learn through repetition and just how you did, right? You build yourself up, and that kind of scares me a little bit. But for what you do, how is AI coming into play?
It is amazing. I mean, I just literally started using it about 3 or 4 months ago, and I found, and it was I had a client who I said, hey, I need you to review this document. It was the final document. It was the final divorce decree. And I said, I reviewed it. It looks okay, but I need your eyes on it, and I need you to say you've read the whole thing.
And you
because
said please too, right?
I'm not. Yeah, I said I'm not the
Please.
one who has to live with this agreement.
Right.
You do, so you should probably read it just so you understand it. Well, she sends me an email back with 5 mistakes, and I went, wait a minute. I'm like, how did I miss 5 things? Like I can miss like a grammar or a punctuation or whatever. And there were 5 mistakes. And I went and looked at every single one of the mistakes. It was wrong. And I'm like, where did you come up with this? And she goes, ChatGPT. I didn't read it. She goes, I put it into ChatGPT and I asked it to review it.
Yeah, so they think I'm 100%.
And I went, wait a minute. ChatGPT is not going to live with your kids and your ex. I'm like, you need to read this thing. Yeah. So they were all wrong. So then I figured out how ChatGPT works. And I have a friend who works at Apple, and he was kind of explaining to me how it brings in the information that it gives you, that it spits out. And so I've used it for a lot of things. Like I tested it out once. I asked it to write a motion for me, and it wrote it in about 2 minutes that usually would take me 3 hours to write. And I couldn't believe it.
So yes, it's bad because it could take jobs, but think about right there how many billable hours.
Oh, yeah.
Now, another attorney might say it took me 3 hours.
Yeah,
right?
another attorney
would
would bill 3 hours. I billed 30 minutes for it.
Yeah, that's what
all I had to do was put the names and the addresses and the phone numbers and everything in there, and I went, it's done. Yeah. It took me 30 minutes. But I can guarantee you, I am in the super minority of lawyers who would charge a half an hour for that. They would charge 3 hours for that.
Reminds me back in biblical times with the tax collectors. You know what I mean? It's like, they're skimming off the top, and D's don't like that.
It's a great tool.
You doing that, yeah.
But what I've learned, and I haven't taken one of these classes that they advertise, but your prompts, what they call them prompts, right? Your prompts are everything.
It's code, basically.
So whenever a client sends me, I can tell that they've been on ChatGPT or Claude or something. Mm-hmm. And I always ask them, I'm like, well, you have to be very nuanced because your question has to be very detailed for it to spit out the right answer.
Sure.
Right? And then the other thing about the reason I don't think AI is going to take the place of lawyers, they're going to take the place of a lot of the work that needs to be done. Yeah. But they're not going to take the place of lawyers because people want to be heard.
The human element. And
they want that human element.
I hope that's the same for my job.
Yeah.
I really do, but
I think so.
Commodity's a commodity sometimes. So what do you think when you're looking at the differences? What separates people who come out okay versus those that get wrecked?
Financially in the divorce?
Yeah, I think it's, the people who come out okay versus those that get wrecked. Like, is it the quality of the attorney? Is it the stubbornness of the person? Is it the lack of education? Like, what do you think it is?
It's a combination of 2 things. Preparation, because there are a lot of people. One of the hardest things that I have to do is get my clients to do what I ask them to do. Like, here's the task, I need you to do it. Yeah. And they, I call it the kid who did his science project at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Right. It's like, I gave this to you a month and a half ago, and now you're reaching out to me on Sunday
the last
night,
minute.
Freaking out because it's due tomorrow. And it's like, you can't do all this stuff the night before. You have to actually, and I coach my clients. I consider myself a coach or a consultant. Like, I'm more, believe it or not, family lawyers are more therapists than they are lawyers. Because the law is the law. We're going to go into court, we're going to make an argument, and we hope for the best. You're more of a therapist, Sure. Like you're trying to talk them off the ledge when things are going awry. So, I tell them, I tell a lot of clients this. I say the winner in a case isn't always the person with the better argument. It's the person who's more organized and more prepared.
Amen.
Because judges and mediators like to be spoon-fed.
Yep.
If you're a judge and you have to hear 20 cases today, and 19 of them rack your brain because they're not prepared, and the last one that walks in the door is spoon feeding you information,
He's gonna love it.
and it makes the decision easy, you're going to be a very nice person.
Yeah.
So I tell them, you want the mediator and the a judge and or to like you, to realize that you're trying to help them arrive at a decision. You're not just walking in there as a hot mess going, give me what I want. You're saying, here's what I would like and the reasons why I think it's best.
So it's like, this is very important to you, and this is blowing my mind because it's so similar to my job in the sense of, like, I feel like a therapist. Buying a home is probably one of the hardest things that people do, or selling a home. You know, hey, can you please get me these documents in time? Why are we closing late? Well, it took you 2 weeks to get me bank statements. You know what I mean? Like having to pull teeth, giving people peace of mind during that transaction. Telling them, I need the whole story so that the underwriter doesn't make up their own story about you. You know what I mean? It's very, very similar.
Remember that? You ever see that plaque that says poor planning on your part is not an emergency on mine?
Exactly.
Like I need that, like behind me on the video, because all my clients are meeting by video, so it's like I should have that, like, poor planning on your behalf is not an emergency. But they always think, you know, oh my God, it's DEFCON 5.
Oh God, it's so true. Well, to tie in kind of into the mortgage aspect, the other reason why I wanted to have you here was one of the biggest mistakes that I get on the lending side is a couple calls me and says, you know, hey Jay, we're going through a divorce. We're going to sell the house. You know, here's the divorce decree. And I'm like, okay, so what are we looking to do? Well, I'm going to go buy a house, and then she wants to go buy a house. And I get the divorce decree, and I see that everything was split, and one of the spouse, usually it's the wife, hasn't worked in 8 years, and all of a sudden has money but has no income.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, you have to rent unless I do some creative financing and figure it out. I think the house is usually probably one of the hardest things during the transaction on who gets it, and because there's all those feelings involved, and spite, and I'm not giving up the house. This is my house. All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How often is the house the biggest issue in a divorce?
Oh, you're right. 80-90% of the time it is.
Yeah.
It's rare that it's not. It's very rare when it's not the biggest thing on the spreadsheet. We do a spreadsheet of all the assets, and it's always the biggest number on the spreadsheet. Now, there are some people who have big, giant retirement accounts, so they've socked away a bunch of money.
Sure.
But, if you're 40 years old, that's a number on a sheet. You're not taking that money out. Yeah. It's the house. And the house is always, and the financing of the house is actually a bigger problem than the house itself, because, you hear the statistics like, what's the number one reason for divorce? And a lot of times they say the statistics are it's financial. I would say it's communication. Like, you can figure out any problem if you can communicate
And you
well
both
with each
want to
other.
do it.
Right.
If you both want.
But communication aside, it's finances. And I could tell you countless stories about how, like, somebody wanted the house, but I'm like, you can't afford this house.
Right.
Like, there's no way.
Your taxes are $20,000.
But it's almost
by
like
the time you're done with all the things, the money you just got in the divorce.
Yeah.
You're
That's
done.
when they look at me and they go, "I paid you $10,000. Figure out how you can make it happen."
Yeah,
and I'm like, "What do I look like?
Right.
Karnak? Like, I can't do that."
So do you think people should fight to keep the house, or is that usually a mistake?
It depends, because I would say it depends on the kids. If the kids you shouldn't make. I've had clients make the decision, I want to stay in the house because the kids have grown up there. Yeah. And I'm like, it's not the same as it was in the 80s, 90s, and 70s. Like, kids don't care. Everyone's moving so much. I'm like, it's not going to be that big of a deal. And in fact, I'll tell you a very short, funny story. I had a client who's like, I want to keep the kids in the house. And I said, how old? And the daughters were like 14 and 16. And I said to her, what do teenage girls like to do? More than anything. You're teenage girls. And she's like, shop. I go, great. Take them shopping for a house. See how much they like the house they're living in.
Right.
You go take them house shopping, and all of a sudden, all the wheels are turning in their
They'll
head.
look at things differently.
They're not going, well, I really don't want to leave. That's
awesome.
you wanting that.
Yeah.
You want them to stay in the house.
Right.
They want to go live
You
in a
have
new
all
house.
those feelings
Right.
tied to it. It is emotional.
So she took him shopping on a Sunday and called me at 2 p.m. and said, "We found a house." I'm like, "Yeah, see, I told you." Teenage girls love to shop, and she's like, "Yeah, my girls love to shop." I said, "Well,
I heard a story like that too.
don't assume that that's going to be the thing." But like you said, the kind of the linchpin is not who gets the house, but who can afford the house.
Right.
And usually they live in a house that's bigger than they can afford, because now they're dividing the family up. Someone's leaving, or multiple people are leaving, and it's like one person has to like take on all the expenses, and they never think about taxes. I'm like, even if the house was paid off, you still got to come up with taxes,
insurance,
and you got to come up with insurance, an
your
electric bill on a 4,000 square foot house, and air conditioning, downsize, and so it's a very big decision. And then the other decision, the other problem is the refinancing, because the other person, if they're on the mortgage, they don't want to pay a mortgage or have their name on a mortgage on a house that they don't live in anymore.
Well, yeah, because if you don't pay it, it hits their credit.
Yeah.
But and that's always a touchy thing when we get to that point. But and you have to hit them with the debt unless it's written off on the divorce decree, then we can remove it. Or if it's not, that's when it gets weird. Yeah. And I've had to have attorneys go back and fix things because they didn't do that right. And I guess that would lead me into the next question, which is, unfortunately, someone's going through this divorce, and when is the best time to? And I can tell you from doing this for 20 years that 1% of the time it ever happens where I'm called, right? But in your opinion, where does the realtor and the lender kind of come in and team up on everything so that we can really understand it together? Because I can tell you, in 20 years, one time in my life have I ever been in that meeting.
Yeah.
One time.
You're 100% right, because what I tell people is, just because I'm a lawyer doesn't mean I'm an expert in real estate, making loans, tax, your kids' therapy. I'm not your kid's therapist, but they seem to think, well, I'm paying you so much money. How come you can't do all this stuff? Yeah. I'm like, well, I'm not the old school doctor who comes to your house who can fix a broken leg or a sniffles.
Sure.
What I always do in that first meeting when I'm looking at the landscape of the case and I know there's going to be an issue, because I always ask them, do you have a house? Because that could be a big problem. Yeah. You have a house? Okay, well, if you don't have someone, I have 2 or 3 names in each category, money and real estate, that I can help you connect with. But you're right. 1 to 5% of the people actually do that. And I say, well, you don't want to be sitting in a mediation making decisions about stuff you didn't learn about. Right. You didn't talk to AJ, or you didn't talk to the realtor. You don't know what the market looks like. Everybody assumes they know things. Yeah. And I say, look, and I did have one case, the woman who I just told you about, who went shopping with her daughters, she invited a guy in, and he sat in the mediation, and he was the one time that, because there was a lot of money going back and forth. It was a big estate. And, he was giving her advice, and she hadn't worked in 40 years, 35 years. And he said, look, you're going to be walking away with liquid $800,000. Don't go buy a house.
Right, because you're going to have nothing. He
goes, you need that money because I can't remember how old she was. She was probably in her late 50s, early 60s. He's like, you need a cushion, and you should go rent. You should go buy something for $200 to $350. And she went out and bought a house for like $800,000. She had zero liquidity. She couldn't get a loan, so she put it all down on the house.
And then she can't ever get it because she can't afford to.
I'm like, how are you going to pay the taxes? She bought the house.
Can't pay the taxes, and now all of a sudden, if you need to get the money out, you can't.
Because you can't.
Because you don't have a job unless you get a job. I mean, that's insane.
But then I'm going to go back to the earlier point, emotional decisions. I'm free. I don't have to deal with him anymore. I'm going to do what I want. He can't tell me what to do. I'm going to go. And you get like this overwhelming bad decision syndrome, You're just making more and more bad decisions.
It's insane. Gosh. So kind of, I wouldn't say to wrap up, because I've got a couple more points that I want to make, but I think kind of get into the meat of
we need to come back and talk about mediation, because if we really want to get into the meat of this, we need to talk about a mediation. And that's going to be a big topic, because you could turn a $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 divorce into a $2,000 to $5,000 divorce with the right mediation setup. That's what I'm doing right now with people. That is the ticket. Attorneys will not tell you that because what they want is the $40,000 divorce.
Sure.
But go ahead.
Yeah, and it's going to go exactly right into that. So if somebody right now is thinking about getting divorced, my first thing always is obviously from my Christian side of things, and marriage is very difficult. Being married for 13 years, I just looked up statistics that said that divorce is actually at the lowest rate it's been almost ever, except for COVID, and since before the 1990s. It's more prevalent in the South due to the fact that kids get married a lot younger here than they do in the North, but that people are now waiting a little bit longer to get married until they are more financially secure and things like that. But if someone is thinking about divorce and they've talked to their pastor, their friends, their people that they trust, what should they do first?
The first thing that they should do is they should meet with someone who gives them different options. Because like I've done in the last 10 plus years is I've developed options. We go to war and we spend a bunch of money. We do what I offer them is this consultation and this consultative approach to how we do this so that you're not spending a bunch of money, and you meet with someone about mediation.
Okay.
Because what happens in lawsuits is everybody starts off at, oh, I need to hire a lawyer, I need to go through the case, I need to matriculate through this case, and then 6, 8, 12 months down the road, we'll go to mediation. And I'm like, what happens at mediation? We settle. Why don't you do that in the first month?
Yeah, and see if we could just.
Why are you spending $40,000 to get to mediation when I have an opening next Thursday at 2:00? Why don't you mediate it now?
Okay.
And they're like, well, we don't know. I'm like, I know. I'm kind of joking around a little bit, but with about a week or two of preparation, I need this, gather this information, I can mediate any case.
Yeah.
I mediated a case that was north of $500 million. And the whole thing got wrapped up for under $4 million.
Wow.
$3,800 was the whole case,
That's
top to
insane.
bottom. Yeah. I was like, it's not complicated. It's a number on a spreadsheet. That number could be $30 million or $30,000. It doesn't matter. It's all percentages.
And I'm sure, I mean, I heard a story the other day at one of my property tours that someone was literally, they were going to court for a kitchen table.
Yeah.
It was going to cost them more to sue and to go through court than it was what the kitchen table was worth. But that kind of spite and that kind of anger was causing them to do that. So I think you're going to kind of get those cases. It's just nuts to me, but some people have too much money.
But that's my point is, if you can get the people from here emotionally down to here to think, and they're most people going through this are emotional on some level, and they're upset. And I have the same exact story. I had settled the case after about 2 hours at the courthouse. We were supposed to go to trial. And the last thing was, he was giving her the bedroom set. And I was like, finally, we're done. Like, literally, we negotiated like 15, 20 things. And he said, but I'm not moving it. And she said, well, I'm not moving it. And the two of them looked at each other, and they were fighting about it. I'm like, so wait, you guys are going to blow up this whole settlement over the
hiring Timmy to come and move
to move it. So guess what I did? I paid for it. I said,
for you, dude. That's awesome.
I was sitting there at 3 p.m. going, I'm either going to scream.
It's like, I'll give a lender credit.
I'm going to either scream at both of you, or I'm going to pay for it. I said, send me the bill. I'll pay the mover bill.
Yeah.
And they both laughed, and I'm like, I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I will pay the bill for the mover.
Dude.
Can we please get out of this? So
gosh.
it's funny that you said that.
So that's what they should do first, and that's great advice. I think, honestly, that's kind of what I tell people when I send them to you. And luckily, through counseling and friendships, my wife and I have literally just stopped people from looking into that direction and just calming everyone down and separating things. But when they do, I'm like, look, just call Steven and just go talk to him. It's free to just have a conversation.
How many people I've talked to at a divorce? Like, when I told people how many people, they go, wait, what? Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, when you and I met on a financial issue, this was years ago. This is, God, it's a while ago, probably like 12 years ago we were talking about this. It was either 10 or 12 years ago. But you do what I do. You say, okay, I'm going to give you your options, and I'm going to explain each option to you. Well, I know this sounds crazy, but lawyers don't do that. They're like, here's your option. You need to pay me and I'll get you divorced. And you're like, is that the only option?
Right.
Well, you talk about refinancing, you talk about selling your home, you talk about HELOCs, you talk about all these different options, you know, you on the loan yourself, you having people co-sign with you. That's what people aren't doing in my profession. They're not telling you, well, your first option is this, your second is this, your fourth is this, because that doesn't make you $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. And to me, that's doing a disservice.
So that's so good. What should they not do? What's the biggest mistake that you see people make when they're about to get into a divorce situation? What should they not do?
This is an easy one.
Okay.
Tell all their friends.
Oh, that's so good.
It's the worst thing you could do because everybody has an opinion.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I give people credit.
And or your family. How about
they
that?
They love you. Your friends and your family love you. And so what that means is they want to support you. And however, there's a big however right after that. They want to help you. They don't want to see you suffer. But they're going to give you an opinion or an advice which is based in nothing. Even if they got divorced, that was a fingerprint. Your fingerprint's different. Like they're going to give you, you should do this or you should do that. And next thing you know is I'm spending a very large portion of my time dispelling myths, telling them, well, that doesn't apply in your case.
Wow.
That's so when they, and there's some people who keep it to themselves, but there's some people who on Thursday or Friday go to the local bar and tell everybody at the bar what's going on.
I got
or they tell all their friends, or they call up their girlfriend and they say, oh my God, can you believe what he did or she did, whatever. And the next thing you know is that conversation turns into legal advice, counseling, financial advice, and now they come to the lawyer. Well, my friend said da 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 da, and I'm like, well, let me kind of break this down for you why that doesn't work. So the number one problem I have is people who share with even other lawyers who aren't family lawyers, you know, but the friends and family is the hardest thing because you have to take that apart.
Well, and then if you don't get divorced, now they already know all your crap. And it's like, you know, I learned that at the very beginning of my relationship, telling my sister something or my dad something about my wife. And it's like, they love you so much that they're going to listen to everything you say, even though they don't know that you were a complete douchebag.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
in that part of the incident. So then they start getting this like disdain for that person because they feel like they're hurting you. And then all of a sudden, like a week later, you're all good. It's like you're at the party at the family dinner and everyone's
and now everybody has to act like they...
You know what I mean? And it's like, then you got to go back, oh, she's really cool. No, she's not, you know?
You told me she wasn't.
Exactly. So it's like, I learned that long time ago at the very beginning. It's like, you know, you have your, like Pastor Dan always says, he's like, you know, you have your three really strong people that'll give you the most honest advice, regardless of your friendship, regardless of your feelings, regardless of the situation. And it's really difficult, you know, to find those three people, but those are also the people that are vaults that aren't going to go and gossip about you. They're going to tell you the hard facts about like, hey man, this is your fault too, you know, things like that. So man, that is an easy
Well,
one.
and like, I'll give you an example. Like somebody I did a divorce case for, she's like, my girlfriend said I should keep the house because if I don't keep the house, he's going to get the kids and I'm going to have to pay him child support. And I was like, okay, those are 4 myths I got to break out now. Like, wait a second, let me start the first one. I'm like, first of all, can you afford the house? No. Okay, well then how are we going to do that? Like, how's that going to work? So you kind of have to go back and you break all these things down and you're like, oh my God, stop listening to your friends. Stop talking to your friends about it. Or just tell them you need help emotionally, not legally. Like, I need help. I need you to support me. I need you to love on me. I need you to hug me and tell me. And what I was telling you before about when I started doing this, I made a pact with myself that I wasn't going to push people into divorce. So I started talking to people about how they could not get divorced. And at the end of every initial consultation, and I probably lost about 70% of my clients because of this, I would pray with them. And they would look at me like I was crazy. Wow. Because they were like, I hate this person. I want to divorce this person. I'm like, okay, we'd finish the meeting and I'd say, you got another 30 seconds? Yeah. Well, I had a questionnaire. And when you're filling out the questionnaire, there was a line there for religious preference. And, you know, 70-80% of the people put Christian or Catholic, you know, or Methodist,
so
or whatever.
Like, hey,
Baptist.
You check the box.
I was like, they checked the box, so I'm sure they're okay with prayer. And I'd give them a 10, 20, 30-second prayer. and I'd say, please be with Nicole. She's going through a tough time. Please, God, walk beside her, give her the strength and the wisdom to make the right decisions for her and her family, for her kids. And I would pray, and I would either get, when I opened my eyes and I looked up, I'd either get a look of shock or tears, like, I can't believe it, a lawyer just prayed with me, right? Or I need to think about this. Is this the right lawyer?
Right.
Because he's praying for me not to get divorced, and I really want a divorce. And so, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to stick true to my faith, and I'm going to do what I got to do. And I'm going to, because the people who do stick with me are going to be stronger clients.
Man. That's so
but
good.
I got a lot of weird looks.
Yeah. But that's good. That's so good. I guess last, how can someone protect themselves financially before filing for divorce?
Oof, that's hard. That's hard because it depends on the dynamic of the relationship. If you have two working spouses,
I guess what should they not do? Like hide money? Like,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
it's going to get found out, right? And then it's
Yeah.
going to make you look even worse. But I guess, how do you protect yourself financially before you file? Is it, because the minute I wrote this and saw it, and I'm like, how can you protect themselves financially before filing? To me, immediately I go into like, that seems like you're hiding something.
No, because
But
you can.
It's
the
not.
one thing you can do. In other words, if you're thinking about it, here's the problem. If you're thinking about a divorce, you think the marriage is not going to last. If you go to the other person who's the money spouse, who like manages the money, the paying expenses and stuff, and ask them, hey, I'd like access to the account, it's a red flag.
Sure.
Why do you need access now? Like,
Right.
I've been doing this, I've been paying the mortgage and the bills for the last 10 years. Why do you need access to it?
Mm-hmm.
So automatically a red flag goes up. But, it could be done very tactfully. And again, this is a reason why you go see a therapist and ask them, how do I bring this up?
Right.
And they'll tell you. Like, you don't go to a lawyer to ask that.
Sure.
Or a financial
And by the way,
person.
that's what I would think immediately is, hey, my attorney should tell me what are the best steps to do.
No.
But you're right. It's like there's a human way of
There's body language.
Figuring
There's
that
the
out.
right time, not when you're in the middle of an argument. I want access to the bank accounts. Like, that's not the time to be asking for access to the bank accounts.
Sure.
It's when everything's going great. But like I said, information like, hey, I need this or I need that. And you can do it very tactfully. Like, I actually coached someone to say, hey, there was a big purchase going on. Hey, we're buying this car for our daughter and she's 16. And I just really feel like you've been doing so much of the work. I'd like to take some of this off your plate. Can I pay the bills? Can I learn how to pay the bills? Can you teach me how to pay the bills? Turn it on him. Right now, he's feeling like, wow, she wants to help.
Right.
Like, not give me access because I don't trust you.
Sure.
It's a different reason. So there's ways to do that, but that's a therapist's job. Like, a therapist can say,
But you're gonna in a divorce, and it's all got to be put on the table one way or the other, right? I mean,
but people lie.
yeah. Well, I'm
People
guessing
lie.
they do.
And ever since
And then what do
the
you have to do,
invention
like-
of cryptocurrency, our jobs have gotten a hell of a lot harder because people
That's
are
so true.
squirreling away money in cryptocurrency, and finding it has become a real challenge.
Wow. I never
I've
think
had
about
cases
that.
where people lie, no, I don't have any cryptocurrency accounts, and the other spouse is going, I know they do, I just don't know where it is or how much. And it's the golden rule. You ask me, what should you do to prepare yourself before? The golden rule: do unto others as you would want them. Don't hide, don't lie, don't squirrel money away, don't do these things, don't overspend. There's one of the reasons that a court, especially in Texas, can award a disproportionate division of the marital estate is because of waste or fraud. So waste, a good example for waste is we have $50,000 sitting in a bank account and my husband flew to Vegas and bet it on black.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of wasteful. If that was your only $50,000,
Right.
it could have been 100, but now it's zero.
Yeah. That's definitely
Right?
not good.
So, people spend money on things and they in hindsight, if it looks and smells like a rat, it's probably a rat, but try to do things that are for the benefit of the marriage, for the community. You going and spending money that really doesn't support the marital relationship can come into question. You can argue this. The guy who, spends too much, or the woman who spends too much, most judges are going to look at it and go, you married this person. That's what you got when you married them. But they're also going to take that into account when they're dividing up are we going to do 50-50 or are we going to do 60-40 or what are we going to do
Sure.
at the back end of this marriage? And, you're never going to talk people into not doing what they're going to do anyway. They're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But you can tell them, look, that's going to have a negative consequence,
So I have like two questions and then we'll wrap it up. One, in a divorce, if somebody cheated, does that make things easier for you in the sense of the law, or does it make it harder?
In the sense of the law, it almost doesn't matter. There's only one reason adultery matters, in my opinion, in a divorce, is if there was a financial component. If someone cheats and they're basically running off to the hotel and cheating
Spending
with
money.
someone else, but they're not spending money. The woman is meeting a guy who paid for the hotel.
Okay.
It's a hard issue, we tell them. But if, let's just say, I hate to make it the guy, but let's just say the guy has a side piece.
Yeah.
He's got a girl on the side and he's buying her jewelry and he paid for her car and he's taking her out to dinners and he's spending a bunch of money.
Spending her money.
Now, judges, the ears go up and they're like, wait a second, there's a financial component. Remember what I talked to you about waste?
Yes.
Where you waste money?
Yeah.
That's considered waste. So if he spent $50,000 on his girlfriend,
On a
not his
vacation
wife,
to Vegas, or
the $50,000 is going to be looked at as fraudulent. Versus
that's very interesting.
it's more, we always ask ourselves, is this a hard issue? Because judges will look at you and say, I'm sorry, it's a relational issue. I know, but judges can also look at an adultery and see how bad it is, and they can figure that into the disproportionate division. Texas doesn't have a 50-50 rule. Texas rule is just and right.
Not alimony.
Nope.
None of
The
that.
judge is to decide how to divide the estate in a just and right manner. Now, you always start at 50-50, but then you look at fault. Like, did one person do this or that? And then you look
Did
at
somebody go blow $100,000 on
Yeah.
credit cards.
exactly,
So-
or have an affair and break someone's heart, or were they an alcoholic or a drug addict?
Sure.
And this is the whole reason they're getting divorced is because this was a bad person, really a bad person.
It's a
And-
fingerprint, right? I mean, every
judge can look
single
at
one's
it-
different.
Yeah, and a judge could look at the estate and say, we're going to divide this estate 55-45 or 60-40
Yeah.
because you were a bad person. So
That's
it
interesting.
happens.
Well, the last question, and one of the reasons why, other than just running into you and talking and having this idea to do this, which is kind of outside of lending, but I think with social media, and by the way, I'm going to post this, and my wife will post this, I'm sure, on social media to help people. That's why I want to do it. But I cannot tell you the funny things my wife shows me from like these moms groups on Facebook. And these ladies go on Facebook and will literally go like, I'm getting ready to divorce my husband. Does anybody know an attorney? And then I'm like, yeah. And then I put your name in there or whatever. But they'll go into like details on a social media platform, on a neighborhood website.
Right.
And I'm just like, what in the hell kind of crazy is this, right? What should somebody do before they go and do that? Because honestly, there's a way to do it. You can do it anonymously, where you can post and say, hey,
Even
we're
that
going through a
doesn't
lot of
help.
stuff. But right? But it's like, that's how people get referrals nowadays, right? I want a realtor on a social media page. You're going to have literally 100 people getting tagged.
I laugh when I see that.
Yeah.
Does anyone know a good realtor?
And
I'm like, who
yeah,
doesn't know a good
yeah,
realtor?
I'm like, good God, right? So it's just like, I understand where people are coming from because, like, I think they want some empathy given to them, right? Because they post probably even more stuff about their lives online. What should they do if, like, what is a good, like, other than, it's like we don't have the phone books anymore. Most people find a lender by going online and searching up.
Yeah.
People call me and it's like, oh, I found you and you have great stars and reviews and all that. But is it just because you said don't go to your friends, right? So it's like, where do you get most of your referrals from? Your friends, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like they get worried because if they go to their friends, then their friends know. So you take that piece away from it. So, that's why I'm kind of putting this out there so people understand what you do and can kind of like listen to this and formulate their own opinion on whether or not they want to call you or not. But if you can't go to your friends and you look stupid, in my opinion, going on social media,
That's
And-
one
and-
below friends and family.
Right.
Friends and family are here asking them for legal advice, and social media is like way down here.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm telling you not to go to your friends and family for advice, why are you going to strangers?
Right.
Right? So here's my advice is a great question, because if you think about it, this is how you should make every decision. You should disassociate the problem,
Okay.
right? Not, I have a money problem, I have a marital problem, I have a health problem, or whatever, financial, whatever it is. Think to yourself, okay, who do I know who's very professional? I consider them very intelligent, very socially adept, right? They're a good networker,
Yeah.
they're a friendly person, people like them, they have good standing in the community. And approach that person and say, like, hey, AJ, I've known you for so many years. I've never used you. I've never done a loan with you or anything financial with you, but I respect you. I think you're a smart guy. I look at your business. I watch your social media. We've met for dinner with our wives or whatever,
Yeah.
and ask them for the referral, a professional that you respect. There are people who I wouldn't even think to approach in a social setting, but I know them from afar as being very intelligent. They seem to have their business wired, like they're doing the right thing. They're respected in the community. And I might go up to them. I did this with a guy who's worth more money than you can imagine. And I said, look, I need to ask you some advice. And he looked at me, he's like, why are you asking me for advice? I'm like, because I think you might have good advice.
Right.
And he had unbelievable advice.
Yeah.
I was like, so I didn't just go to my random friend who's my best friend who I go drink beers with,
Sure.
or play pickleball with, like you go to somebody who you're like, who's a person who kind of covers a spectrum,
Sure.
and they have a lot. I see them having a lot of relationships. I see them around town talking to doctors, lawyers, real estate people, CPAs, pastors of churches. They just seem to have a personality. Go ask that person.
That's good. That's good advice.
You know?
That's really good advice. So to wrap this up completely with a bow on it, what are two things that you want people that are in this space, meaning people that are looking to, possibly get a divorce, and also people who are watching this just to learn something, right? I mean,
Well, people who are going through the divorce right now.
we're
need
going
to
through
think
it and
about
are like, what are two things that you just that you think they need to understand, in an easy way?
Step back and take a deep breath first. That's the first thing, because when this happens, when either you're surprised by a divorce or you're the one wanting the divorce, or there's a child custody fight. I don't want to discount those, because there's a lot of relationships where the parents don't get married and then they separate, they break up, and now there's a child or multiple children, and it's just as bad as a divorce. They have to figure
Maybe
that
worse.
part out,
It's all about the kids.
So what I tell people is, if I get them early enough and they come to me and they say, look, I haven't brought this up, because I do get those phone calls. I haven't brought this up, I've just been thinking about it, I'm kicking the tires, I don't know what to do next. And I kind of switch gears into therapist. And I'm like, well, let me explain, what's the problem? Can the problem be fixed? If you don't think the problem can be fixed, I always ask, well, what have you done to solve the problem? Who have you reached out to? Who have you contacted? There's not just one solution. A lot of people think the only solution to a marital problem is going to a therapist. Well, guess what? There's always one person who doesn't want to go to the therapist.
100%.
There's one who does, and there's one who doesn't. So I say, well, that's not the only. Go on a honeymoon.
Yeah.
Go on a weekend vacation in Cancun. I know, what's the worst that can happen?
Right. Well.
Right? Don't go on a cruise.
Don't let them take you out on a boat in the Bahamas. I saw that happen to
Don't
that
go
lady.
on a cruise. Make sure there's land everywhere.
Yeah.
But what they could do is take a step back and not think emotionally, because the emotional person, and I'm not saying this is bad, because everybody has
Most
emotions.
mistakes are financial, whatever. It's an emotional screw up because you didn't think it through. You responded in emotion.
Yeah.
So okay, that's good. And
Take a step back.
Take a step back and
Decrease the emotion. Don't make decisions when you're emotional, and then start to think about, and a good friend of mine wrote a book. She's an author, so she's written on a lot of different topics, but I actually proofread and helped her write the chapter on how to pick a lawyer. But she wrote a book called If Divorce is a Game, These Are the Rules. And it basically broke down a lot of stuff that we've been talking about today. But the chapter on a lawyer was very specific because what it said was, don't just go to a lawyer and hire a lawyer because your best friend got divorced 5 years ago and used this guy or girl, whatever. So it's like, you need to actually interview them. You need to know exactly what you're looking for in a lawyer, and then go interview 4 or 5 lawyers and ask them specific questions. I can't tell you the last time somebody asked me questions and interviewed me in a meeting. And I'm like, you should be interviewing me.
Wow.
And but what they do in their initial consultation is they vomit up their entire marriage. He did this, she did that, I hate him, she did, the kids hate him, blah, blah, whatever. And they're literally, I'm like, we're going to get to that. Don't you want to know what I do?
Right.
And how I do it?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're a lawyer, you must know what you're doing. I'm like, no!
Right.
Like it's the biggest mistake you can make is just assume because someone has a plaque behind them
100%.
and an ESQ after their name that they know what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah,
something
you
that's
have
gonna
to
be the
actually
truth.
come prepared
Well, and have a heart for
with a
what you
list
do.
of questions.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not just about the money, and I think that's what makes you different. I hope that that's what people see when they come to me is that I care, and it's like, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to tell you not to buy this house if I think you're going to be house poor, and then it's up to you to make that decision, It's
funny you use that term because my parents own an art gallery in New York, and my dad used the term house poor, and I was like, what does that mean? He goes, you know how many houses we sell a $5,000 work of art, and I show up and there's no furniture in the house?
Right.
And I go, why is there no furniture? He goes, because they bought the biggest house they could and they can't afford furniture. He
Right.
goes, there's a mattress on the floor. And I'm
They're
like,
house poor.
is the best term. I was like, I've never heard that before.
It is a hard situation, and that's kind of
Well, it's almost the same as a lawyer. I just had lunch with someone. We were talking about this, and I say when I used to meet with clients in person, I would draw a big circle. I go, imagine this is a pizza, right? And you have $100,000 between the two of you, and I draw a line down the center. I go, that's 50 and 50. Is that a nice little division of your estate? 60-40, 50-50, whatever. Yeah, I go.
Yeah.
Now get 2 lawyers involved and take 25 out here and 25 out there. Now you got 50.
right.
Now you're splitting 50. Not
And you're
100.
visually showing them that
Right.
pie.
And I'm like,
smaller.
that pie doesn't get bigger. It
Yes,
gets
it gets
smaller.
right?
I said, so if you guys go bull lawyer up, I'm automatically going to cut this pie into 4 pieces.
Wow.
And
That's a great
that
illustration.
is a visual.
That
They
is a
go,
great
wait a
visual.
second. I'm like, well, what do you think's going to happen? You're not going to realize that till 6 months from now.
And
you're
then
gonna
you're
be
going to kick yourself in
now
the
we're
ass
dividing
because you
50,
just lost
not
25
100.
grand and 25 grand, and oh my gosh.
There's a great quote that says, "I'd rather get it right than be. I'd rather get it right than be right."
Yes.
That's it. I mean, like, do you want to be right? Because that's going to be expensive. Do you want to get it right? That's a little less expensive.
Man, thank you for your time. What's the easiest way for people to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is just go to ctxlaw.com. I have different options on there. There's a mediation route if people want to explore mediation. I usually have that conversation in the beginning. What are you looking for in an attorney? Are you looking for a quick settlement and resolution that's not going to cost you thousands of dollars? Or do you is this going to be a fight, a World War III? And so ctxlaw.com, there's a free consultation in there. Like I said, you book 15 minutes. I don't care some people go 5 minutes, some people go 30, 40 minutes. It doesn't matter. But I try to basically walk people through their options. And if you do hear this podcast, ask me some questions.
Yeah.
I really want to be interviewed. Like,
Yeah.
I want people to ask me questions like,
Put
what are my
questions
options?
underneath the YouTube page here. Subscribe and like.
I love that. I love talking about options. Like, I'm at heart, I'm a negotiator. I'm not really a litigator. I love litigating, but I would rather negotiate a settlement and have people walk away going,
Can you go over
I'm
to
happy.
Iran and figure this out?
Yeah, no.
Get our mortgage rates back?
Not with guys who would prefer death over anything else.
Last thing, I forgot about this. So I heard this, and I want to know if it's rumor or true.
Okay.
So one of my friends was going through a crazy divorce, and it was ugly, and she was trying to drag it out just to spite him, and yada yada. Is it true that if somebody goes, so say the wife goes out and she talks to 7 different attorneys, that man cannot now pick those attorneys?
People do that.
I heard.
I know lawyers
and I didn't know if that was true or
who
not.
literally schedule the 1 hour appointment, sit there playing solitaire on their phone as the other person's telling them.
And it's just so that person can't go to that
It's
person.
conflicted out.
Good
That person is conflicted out. You go find the 5 nastiest lawyers in town who charge the most money. Go interview them. It'll cost you a couple $1,000 because they're all going to charge you $300 to $500.
But then your other person can't use it.
Yeah, I've seen that happen. It's kind of funny because I was like, I want to be in that business where people think I'm so nasty that they just pay me $500 to talk to me. And then they go, I don't need you anymore.
Right.
I'm not going to hire you. And so, well, the reason for that is now that lawyer knows confidential information, so the other party can't hire them.
Right. So it's true, folks. So I hate to give that information out there, but
It's kind of a nasty way to do it.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. This is blinking. That's
Oh, it's all good. Don't worry about it.
All right.
Yeah, that just means time's up, man. Well, I appreciate you coming out.
Good to see you, buddy.
talking
Always.
about it. So get in touch with Steven if you need him. If anything, leave questions, comments below, and we'll talk to you later.